Here we are, folks. DodgerHeads Live, presented by DodgerBlue.com. I'm Jeff Spiegel. That's Daniel Starkin. And the Los Angeles freaking Dodgers are going to the World Series. They were down 2-0 in the series. They were down 3-1 in this series. And the best team in baseball wins 3 straight against the Atlanta Braves. This game, they made us sweat. They made it complicated. It was all over the place. There were decisions to be made. And at the end of the day, 4-3, the Dodgers win. They're going to the World Series. And I'll just say it right up front. I think this is probably the biggest win in my lifetime as a Dodger fan. Game 7 of the NLCS, to be down 3-1 to come all the way back. Now, I was born a month after the World Series in 1988. So all that considered, to me, this is the biggest win in Dodgers history, of my lifetime of Dodgers history. And I absolutely am shocked. I can't believe it. It feels impossible to win 3 in a row, Daniel, and they just did.
Yeah, we were sitting here not too hopeful just a few nights ago, but we knew how talented this team was, so we still believed that they would be able to do it, and lo and behold, they did. They came back from down 3-1. They're going to the World Series, and I'd have to agree with you. This feels like the biggest win. Obviously, hopefully it'll be trumped in the next couple weeks here once they win the World Series. But, they've been in Game 7s before. They've been in winner-take-all games before. But I don't know why. The stakes just felt super high on this. This is a World Series or bust team. Obviously, the series didn't get off to the best start. But at the end of the day, the best team won, and here we go. One more series to go.
Yeah. I mean, we'll get to the nitty-gritty of how they got to this point, but I think there's 2 sort of defining plays. One of them which will forever be remembered, and one of which, I should say 3 probably defining plays, one of which will be remembered, and that's Cody Bellinger's home run. This is a guy who's struggling. I was getting texts from a friend who's not a big baseball fan that says, didn't Cody Bellinger, wasn't he like the MVP last year? Like, why? What is his average at this? He's not very good. And then he looked kind of a mess in that at bat. He looked kind of a mess pretty much the whole game. And then he catches a fastball middle, and he catches that ball as clean as you could possibly catch a ball and loses his absolute mind. An unbelievable bomb from Bellinger puts the Dodgers up 4-3. I tweeted before that inning, I said 1 run and 6 outs. They got the 1 run. They still needed the 6 out. We're going to get to Julio Urias. And I'm going to ask you in a few moments whether or not Urias deserves co-MVP with Corey Seager, because I think there's a conversation there. But first, give me your reaction to that Cody Bellinger home run.
I mean, that was a frustrating inning, right? Because we saw a lot of hittable pitches. Well, first of all, Muncy got screwed on a pitch that was outside that they didn't get the call. So it was a rough night for the home plate umpire. But, him and Smith were just watching hittable fastballs. Like, it kind of was the story of the series. There were so many hittable pitches that the Dodgers didn't hit. And finally, Cody got the same pitch right down the middle, and he did what he was supposed to do with it. And it was awesome. I mean, that was the biggest hit of the season by far. I mean, no question about it. And let's hope he's okay. We saw, he hurt his shoulder on the celebration. He has a history of that right shoulder and dislocations. But, that was the swing they needed. We would have liked more runs, obviously, but tonight it was enough.
Yeah, and I mean, for all the talk that we've had and Dodger fans have had about Dave Roberts and the decisions he's made, you and I have both been pretty vocal that the Braves manager has made a handful of pretty questionable decisions. Well, how about this one? They bring in Chris Martin, who made 30 pitches the day before. They bring him in, and Smoltz goes, well, he's probably just here. I believe it was the bottom of the 6th. He's probably here to get 1 out. That was the inning where Kike hits the home run, Taylor doubles, the Dodgers have the top of the order up, and he can't do anything. Martin comes in to face Turner, and Turner pops out. So you're thinking, okay, Martin's coming out. Well, they leave him in for the next inning. He strikes out Muncy. He strikes out Smith. And then a righty, they leave in to face the left-handed Bellinger. He leaves the fastball over the middle. I don't know what pitch it was, but it was probably somewhere around his 20th pitch, maybe 15th pitch of the game, and Bellinger absolutely cleans it out. I had joked that if you wanted to pitch to the Dodgers tonight, the best place to put the baseball was middle, because the number of times Turner or Muncy or whoever just missed middle. Well, Bellinger didn't miss, and it goes out. The Dodgers take the lead. But I mentioned 2 other plays. The other play that I think, we won't forget tonight, but that Mookie Betts robbed a home run in a Game 7 in which the Dodgers won by 1 run. Like that ball was the last catch that Mookie made up against the wall, that was not going to be a home run. Now, there was a guy on, so if that lands, there's runs. This ball was absolutely going to be a home run. Betts brings it back, and in a one-run game. So what's fascinating is you could look at Mookie Betts' box score, and you could say, wow, they're paying this guy all this money. He didn't hit particularly well. Yes, he gets a double in the ninth or the eighth that kind of amounts to nothing, but no real power, low average. Mookie Betts made 3 unbelievable series-changing defensive plays in one series.
Yeah, series-changing plays. All 3 of the last games, they needed to win all of them, and they might not have if Mookie doesn't make those catches. But I'm going to go back to Snitker real quick, because to me, he totally got outmanaged in this series. I mean, obviously, he straight up didn't know like that you have to wait for a pinch hitter to be called up in that one game. That was a horrible mistake. But in this one, a lot of the decisions he made were questionable to me. Like the first one was going to AJ Minter, who was awesome, but he completely emptied the tank in game 5. Like there's no way one day of rest was enough to get him back. And no surprise, he got hit around a little bit, gave up some runs, and then Chris Martin threw 30 pitches last night. Like I get it that those are some of your best guys, and it's game 7 and you're running on fumes. But to me, those aren't the guys to go to, right? No. Like the Dodgers, the 3 guys the Dodgers had that pitched in the last 2 games were Trinan, Baez, and Kenley. And Dave Roberts stayed away from 2 of them tonight, which I thought was the correct decision.
The third guy pitched 2 innings.
He went to Trinan probably for a little too long, but hey, it worked out, and you don't question a manager's decisions, obviously, when it works out like that. So, but I actually like some of the decisions Dave Roberts made, which I'm sure we'll get into. But I mean, hey, they found a way to grit it out. It wasn't pretty, but hey, here we are.
Yeah.
Going back to the World Series.
And I mean, the Minter decision. So they bring in Minter, the lefty, who they saved to be an opener. So, I mean, that kind of tells you what they thought. This felt like a reactionary decision to a guy who pitched well, yes, but it was 50-something pitches like 2 days ago. They bring him in with Jock Peterson up. Now, Snitker does know you can pinch hit in baseball, right? Because, like, yes, Jock Peterson can't hit lefties, but the Dodgers do have righties. Now, I've been incredibly critical of Kike Hernandez all year. His batting average has been terrible. All year, he's kind of looked lost at the plate. He does catch the home run in game 1. They pinch hit here. And again, with 2 strikes, Kike absolutely smashes the ball. And again, another moment that could get lost. I think they said this is only the 3rd time there was a game-tying home run in like past the 6th inning in Major League Baseball history in a game 7 or something. But he does that. Then Taylor smokes the double. And all of a sudden you're like, oh my gosh, they're about to break this open. Mookie Betts, Corey Seager, Justin Turner. Of course, Mookie pops out, does move the runner over. Seager grounds out. Unbelievable play by Albies. I had no issue with sending Taylor there. You just have to take your chances. And then Turner, doesn't do anything anyways. He pops out. So that's the second play that really stood out to me, was the Mookie catch that kind of leads to all that. The third play, which goes all the way back to the very beginning, was Justin Turner. Now, again, Justin Turner isn't a guy I'd say I've been critical of, but it's not a guy who's really performed. Offensively, he hasn't been great. Defensively, he's good, but there hasn't necessarily been a spot for him to make a ton of plays. Well, the top of the 4th, I mean, that was the moment. The Braves have runners on 2nd and 3rd with nobody out and a hard ground ball right at Turner. Now, what's fascinating, again, just to set the stage for that moment, the infield was playing back, which John Smoltz even mentioned. He said, oh, interesting here. They're playing the infielders back. Clearly, they just want to get outs. They're not really playing to cut the runner off. Well, the ball is smoked so hard at Turner. He catches it cleanly, makes a perfect throw, and all of a sudden they got Swanson in a rundown. The ball comes back to Turner. He makes a diving tag attempt, which is a little aggressive because it looked like he missed his back and just caught his ankle. Yeah. But then for him to get up and pop up and be able to grab a baseball and throw a perfect strike to Corey Seager at 3rd and tag Austin Riley out was absolutely a game changer at that point. They get double play. They go from runners on 2nd and 3rd with no outs to a runner on 1st with 2 outs and no runs. Unbelievable play by Justin Turner. And as somebody pointed out, that's not an athleticism play. That's an intelligence play. That's a want-to play. And that's exactly what Justin Turner has been for the Dodgers forever.
Yeah. Real quick, I just want to point out Corey Seager was just named MVP of the series, to no surprise. But that play, that was another series-changing defensive play right there. The Braves had the Dodgers on the ropes. They could have added some more runs right there, but Turner comes up thrown home, and yes, it was an incredible play by Turner, very instinctual. And it was equally as bad base running by Austin Riley, who was just kind of standing between second and third for some reason. Like,
Yeah.
you learn in Little League there, like, you bust it to get to third as quick as you can. And also the guy that hit the ball, Markakis, didn't even get to second on that play. He jogged to first and ended up staying at first. So that was horrible base running. But I mean, they say the game is what, like 70% mental, 30% physical or whatever. And that was a perfect example right there. Like, that double play right there was huge.
Yeah.
And we saw them capitalize after that, which is what you have to do in a situation like that.
Yeah, absolutely. So a number of things I want to get to before we're done tonight. One of them will be the conversation about the MVP, Corey Seager, very deserving. My argument is not whether or not Corey Seager deserved it, it's whether somebody else did. But let's kind of go inning by inning, and then we can get to some of the decisions Dave Roberts makes. So you and I are on here last night. We're saying who's going to pitch, who's going to start. We predicted maybe it's Gonsolin, maybe it's Urias. I mentioned maybe you go with an opener in Gratterall. They do end up going the opener route, but it's Dustin May, a guy that both of us expected to pitch, so I wouldn't say either of us were surprised. The problem was Dustin May was an absolute Mets. 8 straight balls to start, 2 walks, Ozuna singles, and the Braves are up 1-0, 3 batters into the game, and the Dodgers haven't even recorded an out. But, and this was kind of the story of the game when you look back on it, May gets a double play, he gets a strikeout, and all of a sudden, we're out. Now the Dodgers in the bottom of the first, they have a runner on second, Turner and Muncy can't do anything. So then Tony Gonsolin comes in for the second, the guy you and I probably would have preferred to start, who we expected to see the most innings of. First batter he faces, home run. All of a sudden you're remembering, we're talking about Gonsolin, we're talking about May, we're talking about these guys. It's like, these are rookies. These are rookies in a game 7.
Yeah.
So, which is probably something that you and I weren't necessarily taking into account fully. Maybe the Dodgers thought more. Maybe they thought these guys could do it. Now, to be fair, they kind of settled down a little bit. Gonsolin wasn't great, but I mean, for me, there was Gonsolin gets a 5-pitch inning in the third, and he comes back out for the fourth. And the fourth is where things got interesting, and this is where the Turner play happens. But before we get there, there's a leadoff walk to Albies, who steals second. Then there's a Swanson comes up, and he walks. So now you have Gonsolin pitching his third inning. He hasn't been great. Yes, he had a 5-pitch, 1-2-3 inning the inning before, but now he's walked 2 straight guys. Why in the world is Tony Gonsolin still in the game at that point? Like, if you're going to tell me that you have all hands on deck in a game 7, and you're in the 4th inning, and your pitcher, who's a rookie, who's not one of your 5 best players, one of your 5 best pitchers, in a game that you're losing in, and he puts runners on first and second with nobody out, well, sure enough, Riley comes up, singles, before they can get him out of the game. So I'm going to be overly, incredibly positive to Dave Roberts tonight. This, to me, was one of those places where it could have gone really, really sideways. And if not for that play about Justin Turner, I think Dave Roberts, there's probably a completely different narrative. I mean, were you on the same page? 2 walks from Gonsolin in the 4th? Like, why was nobody warming?
Yeah. To me, after the 2 walks was the time to yank him. It was clear, like, he already gave up the home run. He settled in a little bit and had a good inning, but I mean, when you go out there walking the first, and it's the bottom, it's like middle to bottom of the order too, right? It's like
the very bottom.
It's not like he walked Acuna and Freeman, who are like incredible hitters, right?
Yeah.
Like he walked some guys that you got to attack, and I mean, I don't know if it was nerves. Like I'm talking for both Dustin May and Tony here.
Yeah.
Like they're 2 young pitchers, so nerves definitely could have played a factor, but it was pretty clear early on for both of them that they just didn't really have it tonight. I'll give Dave Roberts some credit for yanking May after the first inning. I thought maybe they'd try to get 2 out of him, but I think it was the correct move to go to Tony right there in the second, and he was just 1 batter too late taking out Tony. So I'm not gonna kill him too much. Like he still got him out of there quickly, but it was 1 batter too late for me. Luckily, Turner makes that play and saves their bacon. So it didn't end up being anything too crazy, but yeah, for me, Dustin and Tony just didn't have it tonight. So luckily, a lot of other guys did, that, particularly Julio.
Yeah, and Trinan's the next guy in, so he's the one who inherits that mess. He does induce the ground ball. Now, this is a play all on Turner, but Trinan does what is needed, which is he gets a ground ball there. Turner makes the great play, and then gets Pache to ground out. Trinan finishes with 2 innings in this game, which that might seem like, okay, ho-hum. This is a guy who's pitched 3 innings in the last 2 days. He had thrown 19 pitches and 14 pitches, and here he comes back, and he gives the Dodgers 2 perfect innings. no hits, no walks, and that was huge. I mean, because one note I made, the Dodgers had walked 5 batters in the first 3+ innings. Before they gotten out in the 4th inning, they had walked 5 batters. I tweeted, the Dodgers were the best team in baseball at not walking batters, averaging like 2.5 per game. They walk 5, Trinan comes in, settles things down, they get 2 innings out of him, and that was another moment for Roberts. That was a moment where it could have gone sideways. I liked it. I thought the bullpen was not at full strength. You take your chances there, and you just say, hey, Trinan's been good. You and I both have said we probably think he's the best reliever the Dodgers have, or at least the guy we trust the most. Yes, he's coming off 3, but you wanted to save Gratterall. It was interesting because they saved Gratterall, but not for the top of the order. They just bring him in the next.
They just brought him.
But Gratterall gets you another perfect inning, and then Urias gets you 3. So, Gratterall walked a guy. But once you go from May and Gonsolin, the Dodgers get 6 innings, no hits. 6 innings and no hits from Trinan, Gratterall, and Urias. Think about that. In Game 7, the Dodgers got 6 innings and no hits from those 3 guys. Gratterall walked one player. He also struck out 2. Urias actually didn't strike out any. But that's kind of where it goes. And so let's take that conversation. Julio Urias ends the series with a couple of wins to his name. He's got 3 wins in the playoffs this year already. In this series, he throws 8 innings, 3 hits, 1 earned, 2 walks, 5 strikeouts, and 2 wins. Should he have been considered for MVP? And I'll say this I know Corey Seager, what he did was historic. Yeah. So we're not talking about like, okay, sure, give it to this guy. I mean, Seager was hands down the best player in the series. But to me, in Game 7, what Urias did tonight, I think Seager wasn't good tonight. And that's not a knock against what he did in the series, but this was the biggest game. Urias gave them 3 perfect innings. To me, he has to be co-MVPs with Seager.
Yeah, to me, I'm fine with co-MVP. I would not be in favor of only Julio and not Seager because, quite frankly, there wouldn't even have been a Game 7 if it wasn't for Corey Seager and some of the things he did in this series. He hit 5 home runs, which is the most ever for a Dodger in a postseason series, which is absolutely ridiculous. Like, we've been talking about how this isn't a home run park, and he did it 5 times in 7 games. So, yeah, Corey Seager was awesome, very deserving of MVP. But I would have been perfectly fine with co-MVPs with Julio because he came up huge in this series. I mean, he gave them 5 innings. Obviously, it was a 15-1 game or whatever that night, but he gave them some length like they needed. And then, I mean, he came up as big as you could come up in a Game 7. 3 innings, he gets to win. He doesn't even get a save, but I mean, he deserves both.
Yeah.
3 innings, no hits, didn't strike anyone out. Was pitching to contact, which is fine. He kept his pitch count down. And he didn't make them have to go to Kenley for a 3rd straight day. And more importantly, because of him, they didn't have to go to Kershaw, which is what we all did not want in this series. And now the Dodgers have Kershaw on normal rest for Game 1 of the World Series. So what Julio gave them was incredibly impressive. He's been awesome this whole postseason. I said last night, the way he's throwing right now, he's probably the best pitcher on the team. There's no one I feel more comfortable with when they're on the mound than Julio right now. Yeah. He was awesome. Hopefully, I don't know when he'll start in the World Series, maybe Game 2 or Game 3, but he didn't throw too many pitches tonight considering he went 3 innings. Like 3 innings, 39 pitches, that's very efficient. I mean, he's been awesome. Nothing but good things to say about Julio and what he's done this postseason.
Now, one thing I do want to ask you about that I hadn't really thought about until kind of the end of this game. We've spent a lot of time talking about 7 games in 7 days from a pitching perspective. A lot of time talking about, hey, how are they going to manage the bullpens? How are they going to manage the rotations? Can these guys pitch on 2 days in a row, 3 days in a row? One thing I never really heard anybody talk about was the impact it would have on the hitters. Yes, you're getting to see the same pitchers, but think about the stress that I'm under. I think about the stress I'm under as a fan, a guy sitting on my couch in sweatpants watching these games. I can't imagine what it's like to stand in the box with 2 guys on and 2 outs in Game 4 or whatever it is. Nobody was talking about that. As I watched the end of this game, I mean, with the exception of Bellinger's home run, which is a massive exception, did it seem like these guys were tired? I mean, as good as Urias was, the box score was great. Like Freeman, he missed with like 4 fastballs right down the middle to Freeman, and Freeman couldn't put any of them in play. So it felt like to me these guys were getting a little tired, and it was starting to catch up with them as the series went on, and specifically as the night went on. Did you see the same thing?
Yeah, no, I agree 100%, and you're right. Like, no one has even mentioned that, and it's definitely a factor to consider. I mean, these guys are used to playing every day, right? Like, they played 60 games in 66 days in the regular season, but those games are not the same as these postseason games, right? Like, the stakes are high, the stress is high. Like, you're facing really good pitching. You're going all out on every play, which definitely takes a toll on you. So I agree 100%. Luckily, in the World Series, we're back to a more normal schedule, so they will get some off days, which is good for the pitching, and like you said, it's good for the hitting.
Yeah. Yeah, and Taylor asks, is the World Series going to be every night also or every other? It's not every night. I don't know.
Go ahead. I could tell you what it is.
Go for it.
It's like a normal. It's like if they would have normal travel days, which obviously they're not traveling, but so they play games 1 and 2 are on Tuesday and Wednesday, so they get tomorrow off, which is good, and then so it's Tuesday, Wednesday for games 1 and 2, then they get Thursday off, then they play 3 games in a row, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. And then they get Monday off, and then games 6 and 7 would be the following Tuesday and Wednesday. So they get 2 days off mixed in there.
Got it. And we'll get to sort of how that shakes out, because I'm sure we both have thoughts on how that applies. And we'll shout out to True Blue Reef, who wants to keep pointing out. I don't remember what you said. I definitely was not too enthused after Game 4. I'm getting criticized for saying the Dodgers were going to lose this series. I predicted a win in Game 5 and that they wouldn't win. But
the reverse jinx is all it was.
Hey, you should have seen the text messages I was sending ahead of Kike Hernandez's home run, as well as Muncy's double. Okay, both of those guys. And I was saying, hey, just pitch the Dodgers middle. So just know that whatever I say, typically the reverse happens. I'm not going to say it's always intentional, but the only guy I won't speak negatively about is my guy, Will Smith. He came through with the 2-run single there, which shouldn't be discounted. That was a big moment for the Dodgers. Yeah. But so there you go. But we will get to a lot of the World Series and kind of what that looks like. Even if it's not tonight, we'll probably have a show out tomorrow breaking down, doing a preview of the World Series. But I want to kind of walk. Go ahead.
Just to add to what that guy was saying, I'll be the first one to put my hand up and say, yeah, I wasn't always optimistic. No. When they were down 3-1, things were looking pretty gloom, but hey, to their credit, they proved a lot of us wrong, and here they are. So yeah, I'm not going to sit here and say I was confident the whole time, because I wasn't.
Yeah, I left my crystal ball in the drawer right before making that prediction. So apologies to True Blue Reef on that one. But I mean, so one other thing I do want to talk about, because this is I think been the storyline this week for Dodger fans, is Dave Roberts. And Game 7, basically a bullpen game. A lot of decisions for Roberts to make. And I think there was a handful of big ones. And we'll start offensively. The biggest decisions Roberts had to make was Kike Hernandez. Well, excuse me. I mean, aside from the lineup, there was some question whether Rios would play for Pollock. And Pollock does get a single. I thought he got robbed. I think it was the second inning. Maybe it was the third inning. The bottom of the third. Yeah, there was tie game. I think there was the bases loaded. That's right. Tie game in the bottom of the third, bases loaded. Pollock is up. And, I mean, he roped a ball. I think you and I were tweeting back and forth. I mean, his first 3 at-bats, his exit velocity was like 103, 105, and 107. So that was a decision he made. I'm not really sure you could say worked out, didn't work out. The big one, though, was pinch hitting Kike for Jock, because it switches the DH, but it is against Minter. Jock had been playing pretty well. That one, I mean, that's not a difficult decision, I wouldn't say. I mean, Kike is there. Jock doesn't hit lefties, and Kike only hits lefties. So, I mean, not a real controversial decision there necessarily, but Kike hits the home run, and that's a big win for Dave Roberts, in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think either of us would be going to Kike as a pinch hitter, but I mean, it did make some sense. Obviously, we know Jock doesn't hit lefties, and Minter was coming in. It was Minter, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so Minter was coming in. He's a lefty. We didn't really have too much success off him last time, but I feel like, I'm not going to sit here and say Kike is the best player on this team. He's not even close, but I feel like he always seems to come up big in the big moments. So credit to him. He's able to keep his heart rate down in those big moments, and he came up big once again. That was huge. Offensively, the 3 big hits were Kike's homer, Cody's homer, and the 2-run single by Will Smith.
Yeah, and it is weird looking at the box score, by the way. The Dodgers finished with 10 hits in the game. The Braves finished with just 3. So, I mean, yes, they walked 6 times. The Dodgers walked 5. But the Dodgers to have 15 base runners, is pretty impressive. So the other decisions, obviously, that Roberts made were the pitching ones. And the Dodgers end up throwing 5 pitchers out there. He made the decision to go to Dustin May in the first. He made the decision to go Cody Gonsolin for the second, for the third, and back out for the fourth. Then he makes the decision to go to Treinen, then to Gratterall, then to Urias, and then to leave Urias in. So, I mean, if you're sort of doing a batting average here, I don't think anybody has issues with Dustin May pitching the first because we knew it was going to be kind of a hodgepodge and he was going to pitch at some point. I get the thinking there completely. You want him for the first 3 batters, and then you go to Gonsolin. We both don't mind the decision to go to Gonsolin because he's the guy we expected to get the most innings out of.
Right.
I think Treinen was the interesting one there because I had issue with how early or waiting 1 batter too long to get rid of Gonsolin. Right. But then Treinen was a fascinating one there. He's a guy who's pitched 2 days in a row, and I'm not sure we've specifically talked about this, but I mean, who did you want out of the pen at that point? Because I imagine neither of us are predicting Treinen at that point.
Right, yeah, and I assumed it would just be May, Gonsolin, and then straight to Julio after that. And then they get, the true relievers late in the game.
Yeah.
But you don't want to bring in Julio with guys on base. So I wasn't surprised they went to Treinen in that spot. Like, we know Treinen has been kind of up and down, but it's pretty clear how this organization feels about him. Like, they have a lot of confidence in him. Feels like every big spot they've gone to him. And he's come through a lot, to his credit. I think he has, him and Gratterall have the best pure stuff in that bullpen. So I didn't have a problem going to Treinen there. Obviously, some things worked out and went the Dodgers' way with the double play and Turner doing his thing. So it worked out this time. I was a little surprised they sent Treinen back out there for a second inning. That was the most surprising thing to me, I'd say.
Yeah.
But again, to his credit, he took care of business there.
And not to mention the 5th inning, which Treinen is coming out, is the top of the order. So he's coming in for Acuna, Freeman, and Ozuna. Which, oh, by the way, that's when Mookie robs the home run. So Blake Treinen goes down with 2 innings, no hits, no earned runs, no walks. He has a Justin Turner double play on his record, and then a Mookie Betts robbed home run.
He could buy them some dinner tonight.
Yes.
For sure.
I mean, he looked appreciative. To be fair to him, he definitely looked appreciative.
Definitely.
So he gets out, but then that's the other interesting thing, because then they go to Gratterall for the 6th. Now, the reason that's interesting is because it's technically, yes, the heart of the order, 4, 5, 6, but we all know those are their 4th, 5th, and 6th best hitters, not any of the top 3. I was surprised. I thought Gratterall was sort of the arm they were hiding, the arm that they were going to save for the 9th or the highest leverage situation. To see him come in the 6th to face 4, 5, and 6 was strange to me. What did you think about that?
The reason it was strange to me was because at that point we pretty much hadn't heard Julio's name all night.
Yeah.
And it was right around that point where I tweeted, like, where's Julio? Like, because we both assumed Julio would pitch and give him, multiple innings. So now we're in the 6th. It's like, all right, where's Julio? Obviously, I feel comfortable with Gratterall in there. I'm with you. I probably would have saved him for the top of the order because those are the Braves' best hitters. But, I mean, it's hard to question anything when Gratterall, pitches a scoreless inning and then Julio. Then finally we see Julio. It's like, all right, now it's Julio time, and he shut the door completely and gave him 3, beautiful innings.
Yeah, so and Gratterall comes in, he gets an easy out on Darno, 101 right on the hands that absolutely looked painful to try and hit through. He walks Albies on 4 pitches, so he does get himself into trouble. Then he strikes out Swanson, strikes out Riley. I'll admit, I was fascinated that he didn't come back out for another inning. This is a guy that they haven't had issues with pitching multiple innings. He didn't pitch yesterday, so he seemed to be somewhat rested, although they did say he was sore yesterday, which is why they weren't going to use him, so that might have factored into it. And then they go to Julio in the 7th. This is a guy that both you and I have been huge on, as far as especially, I would say, in the playoffs. I mean, Urias, maybe it's just the name brand. I've liked him all year. We both have said maybe his numbers are better than the actual what it looks like, but he seems to get the job done, especially in the postseason. 7th inning, no question, we like Julio there. 8th inning, no question, we like Julio there. That's the inning. So 7th and 8th, by the way, he's got Acuna in the 7th, and then he's got Freeman, Ozuna, and Darno in the 8th. No problem.
Right. That was a big thing right there.
Yeah, the 8th to me was like, okay, this is the inning. This is like, if they lose, it's going to be here. Both you and I mean, everybody on Twitter is trying to guess what happens in the 9th. Like, we're all having nightmares on one hand, saying, dear God, please do not put Kershaw in for just lock Clayton Kershaw in a room somewhere, and Dave Roberts, don't let him touch the phone. So then it's like, okay, do you put Urias in? The argument against Urias there was that Albies was due up, and Albies is a much, much, much better hitter from the right side against lefties than he is from the left side. The counter in my mind was there wasn't a right-handed arm I trusted. The only arm that I trusted more, maybe as much as or close to as much as Urias at that point, was Gonzalez, who's another lefty. Next on that list is McGee, who's another lefty. So there wasn't a righty. So that's the biggest argument for me for why you leave Julio in. Again, he wasn't perfect. He was playing to contact. He wasn't striking guys out, but he kind of got the job done. As far as how the ninth inning played out, it was interesting because Jansen was the guy warming. So if stuff got hazy, it would have been Jansen. I don't have a total issue with that, but talk me through your thought process of who comes out for the ninth and who's the guy warming in the bullpen.
Yeah, to me, riding Julio was the obvious choice there. He just got through 2 innings. It's the bottom of the order coming up. Yes, Albies is, he's better righty, but we want our best pitcher on the mound. That's literally all I care about. Like, I don't care if their hitters are better against lefties. I don't care. I'm putting the analytics away right now. Julio was the guy for that job, and I thought Kenley was the right guy to have behind him in case things, got tough. Just because of the experience we've seen from Kenley, he's been in those big spots before. When you're talking about, a guy like Gonzalez, yes, he's throwing the ball really well right now, but at the end of the day, he's a rookie with not too much experience, and we saw how that went for May and Gonsolin. So to me, Kenley was the right guy to have loose behind him. But for me, it was a no-brainer to at least send Julio back out there for the ninth. And if someone would have got on base, then things really start to get tough. Like, you're not sure what to do there. But to start the inning, for me, it was easy, Julio.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, again, it ends up working out. The Dodgers end up winning, obviously. And it goes down as, again, I mean, like a historic performance from Urias for a team that desperately needed outs, for a team that and he did it easily. I mean, that's probably the part I will most appreciate from Julio is that it was seamless. It wasn't like he was putting runners on every inning and getting out of it. It was just 3 up, 3 down, and all of them were no doubters. It was like, okay, ground ball right off the bat. You're like, that's an out. Ground ball right off the bat. That's an out. Pop up to center. Immediately knew it was an out. Joe Davis started his victory call a tad too early for me. It was like about 7 seconds before Bellinger already caught the ball. But definitely interesting, and that's kind of that kind of I think brings to which is what's probably the other most interesting storyline for the Dodgers moving forward, especially right now, which is Cody Bellinger, the health of Cody Bellinger. They showed it. You talked about it. He's had issues with his right arm. He does the celebration with Kike Hernandez where they smash their forearms together. He then in the next inning looks at Mookie Betts and basically says, yeah, I popped my shoulder out. Now, I'll say this much. I've dislocated my left shoulder twice, and I've had it subluxed multiple times, which is where it pops out and then pops right back in. You can play in the moment. Like, the next 3 hours are not an issue. When he wakes up tomorrow, that arm is going to be dead. Like, he's not going to be able to lift his arm up, is my guess. Now, he's got far more medical care than I've ever had and a far more expensive arm than I have. But that's... like that, this isn't nothing. This is actually a big deal, I think, for the Dodgers if Cody Bellinger is hurt. Now, he went back out there, but again, I will be so fascinated to see the reports probably Tuesday morning. When he goes to take batting practice on Tuesday, I think that's when the storyline's really going to start.
Yeah. I mean, obviously, that's a huge thing to keep an eye on moving forward. Cody Bellinger is so important to this team. Like, even when his bat isn't going, just having him in center field makes you feel so comfortable, especially with Mookie and right too. Like, that's the best defensive combo in baseball. So I mean, we need Cody, and obviously the home run was huge. So maybe the bat's coming around, which would be, just a huge plus for this lineup. But yeah, it's definitely something to keep an eye on moving forward. I think Cody he's dealt with, right shoulder issues before and dislocations. I think it was last year when he was playing right field, there was like a week or two where he had to play first base just to rest that shoulder. So, yeah, that's definitely something to keep an eye on. Hopefully he's okay. Hopefully it was, like you said, something that it went out of place quick and went back in and there's no long-term effects. But, I mean, we'll just have to wait and see in the next couple of days after he sleeps it off.
Yeah. So let me kind of do a couple things to sort of put a bow on this series. Obviously, now we know how everything plays out. So we can look back on games 1 through 6 with a far different perspective.
But actually, real quick, I got a Cody Bellinger quote here.
Good.
He said after the game, he said, "I'm good. I hit Kike's shoulder a little too hard, and my shoulder popped out. I had to go back into the trainer's room, and they popped it back in so I could go play defense. It kind of hurt. I'm gonna use my left arm. I've never dislocated that one." So sounds like he's good for now, but still obviously something to keep an eye on.
Yeah, and I mean, like I said, I've dislocated my shoulder, and you can play. I've dislocated it playing basketball. I've dislocated it playing softball. Like, you can continue to play. It's 6 hours later, and the next morning when that thing starts to act up. So I'm not trying to be the doomsday guy here, the Debbie Downer, but that's a massive storyline to keep an eye on in the next couple of days. But going back to the last 6 games, now we know how it played out. What are kind of the moments for you that you're going to remember from this series? Obviously, Mookie's catch to save a home run in this one, the Turner play, the Bellinger home run. Other than the kind of the headliners, what are the ones you look back on now? You're like, oh man, that was really big.
I mean, the Will Smith homer. What was that in Game 5? I think.
Yeah.
That's what really kind of started the comeback, I'd say, because they were losing at that point, and it was like not a whole lot of energy that night. And then he hits that homer, and then the Dodgers never looked back from there. So to me, that's the one swing that changed this series. All of Corey Seager's homers were absolutely massive. And obviously, when we're talking about straight up moments, what's going to be the most memorable? Scoring 11 runs in the first inning of Game 3 was pretty incredible. That's something I'm never going to forget. There were a lot of moments in this series for both teams too. I'm sure. Obviously, Braves fans aren't too happy right now, but that team battled the whole way. They're a quality ball club. And I think we're going to see this series again in the coming future.
Yeah. I mean, it's a team that's set up for success. And yeah, I think you hit it. I mean, the Will Smith home run was absolutely huge. The 11-run inning. I mean, the almost comeback in Game 2. Like, obviously, we can laugh about that one now, now that we came out the other end. And, I guess one thing I'll say about Game 7, and then we'll wrap the show up, is there's something about the fact that they had to go get 5, 6, and 7 that now I almost feel better about going into the World Series. Like, if the Dodgers had won this in 5 or 6 pretty comfortably, I probably would have been really confident. But there's something about the fact that they had to dig deep and go down and get these 3 must-win games, get the urgency level up, that makes me think that they're at a mindset, they're at a place going into the World Series, which, by the way, is in the same park they've now played, 10 games in. So they're a park they're very familiar with. The Rays have not played in it ever before. So it's definitely, I mean, like, there's a lot of advantages, but I think one is the mindset that the Dodgers had in Game 5 and Game 6, and especially in Game 7, I think is a huge advantage for them moving forward. So, not that you can quantify that, but looking ahead, I have a confidence level because of what they just came through. Now, could they be exhausted? Yeah, but with the day off on Monday and then the days off that they're going to get, especially if you assume Clayton Kershaw has got to be your Game 1 starter in the World Series, so you're hoping to get length out of him. So, I mean, for almost all of your arms, you're probably hoping to get 2 days of rest, with the exception of, and a guy like Gonzalez, McGee, some of those guys haven't pitched in a while anyway. So I'm not too worried about the stress that this will have put on them. If anything, I think it heightens the awareness. It heightens the sort of urgency that we didn't feel like the Dodgers were playing with. Now they know what it feels like to play with urgency. They don't have to worry about some of the stuff that they were, and I think they go straight forward. So one interesting question I'll ask this. Eric Guajardo asks, Urias, how would you use Urias in the World Series? Is he a starter for you, or is he kind of this absolute weapon out of the bullpen the way they've been using him? With the days off, keep in mind that, Buehler could pitch Game 1 and Game 5 Kershaw. Yeah, excuse me. Kershaw could pitch Game 1 and then Game 5 on basically normal rest, right?
Yeah, I mean, they definitely have some decisions to make, because now you only need 4 starters instead of 5, which is a huge advantage, because you could pick one. You could pick one of Julio, Tony, and Dustin, and you make one of them just a straight up reliever for the series, and then another one of them only has to start relieve as well. So I definitely think the offenses are a huge advantage. To me, I'm still using Julio as a starter. I'm probably 2 or 3. I'd probably have to do the math, but I have him starting one of those games, so that way he could start 2 games in the series. To me, the way he's throwing the ball, I want him throwing as many innings as possible, and I think the best path to do that is to start 2 games. But I mean, they do have some decisions to make, and they have some quality options. So I mean, whichever way they go, I feel like Julio's going to make a big impact on the series regardless.